Hello, hello, hello. Kyle, how's it going, buddy? How are you?
Jay Watson, I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. Welcome to the actual 10th episode of the Watson&Wiltshire podcast.
That's
Tonight, we are going to be studying, looking at, diving into, moving around a little bit, the idea of both awe and wonder, specifically childlike awe and wonder.
That's right. That's right.
We got a nice recurring theme going tonight. I think it's going to be good. We're going to talk a little Dead Rockstars, maybe even read a little bit. We haven't done that, I don't think, on this podcast, and so yeah, I'm excited about that.
That's
man,
big.
we talked a little bit about it. It's kind of funny if you think about it, because I would almost say that our podcast as a whole, in some ways, is about that childlike awe and wonder, that story that. What you loved when you were a kid, you love now. We've told a bunch of those stories, Christmas, things like that. But, one of the things that I think is missing a little bit in our world these days is fun and the awe and wonder of things and being excited about what the world's like. And so I think it's great that we get to talk about this today.
There's this new movie coming out with Zachary Levi, who is the lead, and his son has autism. And I can't remember, maybe the movie might be called Unbreakable Boy or something like that. And he has a line in that trailer that gets me every time, because it's like, man, I know what he's saying. He says, I wish I could feel anything as much as he feels everything.
The Unbreakable Boy.
Yeah. And I'm like, dude, I feel that. Like, I wish I could feel the same way that I did when I was a kid. Yeah. The excitement, the joy, the awe, the wonder, and some of the stuff we're going to talk about tonight kind of gives me and you as well, I believe, we'll see when we get there, some of that feeling of awe and wonder and joy and excitement, and, it just brings back some of those feelings. So I'm really excited for our conversation tonight, man.
One of the things that, this is a little bit lighter, but that feeling of being in a movie theater and being so excited about a movie and then being blown away by it when you're a child, it's almost impossible to replicate. It's one of the reasons why when we're in our mid-40s, we're still talking about Star Wars. Because it was such a seminal moment for us. And so, I can relate. I think we all need to be okay with, sometimes going outside late at night, looking at the stars and being like, wow, that's amazing. And not missing out on that, not stopping to have a little, I'm not talking about shock and awe, but a little awe and wonder.
Awe and wonder. Yeah. Just little excitement, a little buzz, a little, whoo, that's cool. So, yeah. Well,
you want to jump right in?
Let's get into it. Yeah.
All right, Kyle, we're going to move to the, what are you taking in portion of the ride. And, for your awe and wonder, you kind of watch something a little differently than what we've hit on before.
Yeah. So, typically we try to watch a show or a movie, and I got sucked in on Max or HBO. It might've been on the actual channel, not on the streaming app. I got sucked into the documentary on Christopher Reeve that has come out recently. It's called Superman, the Christopher Reeve story. And it is a real gritty kind of, in-depth look at his life. And, if you're younger than us, you might not know who Christopher Reeve is. Christopher Reeve is the man who played Superman in the 80s, late 70s and up into the mid 80s that Jay and I grew up on.
When was the first movie? Was it 78 or something like that?
78. Yeah. It was one of the first like blockbuster big attempt at doing a comic book movie on the big screen. So it was a big swing for them to try to do that. And back in 78,
was that Richard Donner?
Richard Donner did the second one, I think. He may have done the first and the second one, but he definitely did one of the two. But it was huge because they got Marlon Brando to be in it. He was like little more than a cameo, but he got top billing.
Yeah,
Marlon Brando.
Yeah.
They got like $1 million too for his very small role. It was a lot of money in the late 70s. It had Gene Hackman played Lex Luthor.
Richard Donner did in fact direct it.
Okay. The second one was a Richard as well. I don't remember. Anyway, we don't need to get sidetracked on that. But Superman was cast, and so when you watch this documentary, you learn about sort of the casting process. And I've heard some of these stories, sort of, just you learn about Hollywood.
Let's just take a step back, right?
Yeah.
You got Margot Kidder, you got Gene Hackman, you
Yeah.
got Al Pacino, you got
Al Pacino.
I'm sorry, not Al Pacino.
Marlon Brando.
Marlon Brando. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Stella.
His parents were like Glenn Ford, and I can't remember who played his mom. And Glenn Ford was a big actor in like the 40s and 50s. So again, it was kind of a big casting, deal to bring him in. But Christopher Reeve was an unknown. This is where I was going. There was all these, they brought in all these big name people. They brought in Robert Redford, a very young Arnold Schwarzenegger tried. He certainly had the body, but as we all know, Arnold, he's not much of an actor. But maybe he's a little better now. But Bruce Jenner, the former Bruce Jenner, coming off his gold medal from the 76 Olympics, they gave him a shot, so it was a lot of like the big names in Hollywood were up for the part. And then they're like, wait, let's go in the complete opposite direction and let's cast a complete unknown. And at that time, Christopher Reeve was a kind of struggling theater actor in New York. And it's really funny. Like he talked about his cohort, the people that were sort of in his circles, guys like Jeff Daniels from Dumb and Dumber, William Hurt, who was the Thunderbolt Ross, the original Thunderbolt Ross.
Yeah.
He's been in lots of other things. Like he would probably be mortified that that's the first thing that.
He's probably won an Oscar. He
has, yes, and he's been nominated for others, yes. But so very accomplished actors, and this was amazing. I didn't know this. I'm going to give you one guess. Do you have any idea who Christopher Reeve, his best friend, was in Hollywood and maybe in life? It's a shock to me.
Jeff Bridges.
That's a good guess. That's a really good guess. Robin Williams.
Yeah. Okay.
Robin Williams was his best friend. They were like brothers, and a lot of that sort of played out in the doc.
I think I remember that vaguely, and not one of the shows or movies, but like, on an award show or something that came out when you're little, they did stuff together. Yeah.
So, Christopher Reeve comes in, he gets the role of Superman as a complete unknown kind of theater actor. And like overnight, he's, one of the most famous people in the world because he's Superman. But just the way, I mean, we're totally biased because we were born in the 70s. We grew up watching him in that, in that outfit. Look here. I hadn't shown this yet. Yeah. When he comes out in the cape and that, and, got the S on his chest, and still get chill bumps, man. Still do. When John Williams score, it's fantastic. But he gets the part, and a lot of his theater buddies, William Hurt, he talks about in the documentary, William Hurt was like, don't take the role. Don't take it, man. They'll ruin you.
Well, 1978, 1977, there's a lot of significant things that are happening right now where special effects are starting to become more than just, cheesy. And like, I remember one of the first kind of commercials was like, watch a man fly, or something like that. And the flight and the different things like that were way cooler than anything anybody had ever seen before.
And they talked about how serious he took, like, I want the audience to think I'm flying, even though he's suspended on wires and all that. But like, he put so much thought into like, how would a man look if he were flying, And so it was really, really fascinating. But really the whole point of the documentary is in 1995, he had a horrible horseback riding accident. He was in a competition, like a steeplechase type competition, jumping over hurdles and, in bodies of water and stuff. And the horse just threw him and he landed directly on his neck and he was paralyzed from the neck down. And it was just this devastation, because Superman is paralyzed. Superman can't walk anymore. And the documentary was just powerful to real gritty, real honest about his life and his struggles. And it's told in a really great way. It wasn't linear. It wasn't like, he grew up in this community and these were his parents and he got into theater in high school and whatever. Like, it kind of bounces around his life, but in a really coherent way where you never really were struggling to wonder what was going on. but just seeing the old clips of him, in that Superman costume, hearing the music, they played the John Williams, score throughout, hearing his story after he was paralyzed. He was such an athlete, like even, a big part of his parenthood, because he has 3 children, was competition. Like when he and his kids would get together, like it was like, we're going to go swimming. We're going to go, play ice hockey. We're going to go, do something active. We're going to ride a horse, whatever. It was always active, athletic, tennis,
Mm-hmm.
And when that was completely gone, he really struggled for a season of like, what do I do with my life? Now that I can't walk, who am I? Yeah. And it just showed that he and his wife just made it their mission. Like, how can we, after he sort of had this rebound, and a big part of it was when Robin Williams came to see him, and Robin Williams, in his typical hilarious way, just came in and made him laugh. Brought joy to his life, and so it told his story of how he made, like, even this awful circumstance of him getting paralyzed bring so many good things into the world. It was just awesome. It was a really, really great story. I'd highly recommend it. I love documentaries. That's maybe not something we've talked much about on this show, but yeah. I totally love documentaries. I get sucked into a documentary almost weekly, whether it's something corny like a wrestling documentary, like what really happened backstage when Bret Hart and Vince McMahon fought each other, or whatever it is. I can get sucked into a documentary, like that. It's good stuff.
And we're talking about Super-/Man.
Yeah.
The Christopher Reeve story.
Yeah.
Super/Man, the Christopher Reeve story.
Yeah.
And it is on Max. That's where you can see it, or on HBO. And man, I think I'm gonna have to go check it out. I haven't seen it, and I think it's really interesting because we're at a place right now where James Gunn has cast as Superman. It is another unknown. It's someone who's big, and like, he doesn't look like Henry Cavill. He's not ripped, and he kind of looks a little bit like Christopher Reeve. And so it's really interesting to see. It's going to be a little nostalgia trip for sure.
Well, they talked about that, how Christopher Reeve he was very tall. He's like 6'4", but he was skinny. He's really skinny. He had to put on like 20 or 30 pounds of muscle to flesh out the suit. Otherwise, he looked like a string bean, out there in this, but he went hard. And a great piece of trivia, the guy who trained him was a guy named David Prowse. David Prowse is known for one role. Do you know what his role was?
I have no clue.
Darth Vader. He was the man who played the physical part of Darth Vader. Obviously, James Earl Jones did the voice, but he was the guy who did the actual acting, the lightsaber duels with Mark Hamill. So he was a bodybuilder, like a champion bodybuilder, and he worked with Christopher Reeve to help him bulk up.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was going to ask you, I mean, what's your, Jay, we've talked about, in shows past, we've talked about Spider-Man, Wolverine, Deadpool. What's your relationship to Superman? As a comic book guy growing up, what's your relationship to him?
I think we're all a little bit shaped by our parents and everybody else. And there's some people that Superman, I think the actual character was made, 1918 or 1920 something? Like, it was early.
Yeah, a long time ago. I don't know.
Early. Detective Comics. I'm going to say 1927. You can cross-check me on that, but it's been out a really long time, and everybody had Superman. Everybody watched Superman, the cartoons, the shows, the old TV shows. Like, it was a big deal. But I was more familiar with Batman and Robin from the 60s television show. But for the most part, I lived in the Marvel world. My dad was very interested in the Marvel comics, and Spider-Man was huge growing up. And the Marvel comics are a little bit more grounded in earthliness in a way, even though they're super. Whereas Superman, that world is a little bit more about, like, these people that are otherworldly. Yeah. And it didn't connect as much for me, Superman anyway. But I love the movie. I watched the movie. I watched him fly. I was blown away by that stuff. And so, my biggest connection to Superman probably would be Christopher Reeve. Yeah.
Yeah. Probably most people our generation, like when you ask, what do you think of when you think of Superman? You think of Christopher Reeve, that's my guy. Superman is my guy. Now, never a big reader of the comic. I'm more of a movie guy, and all of my love for the comic stuff, it's the movies, it's the cartoons.
Yeah.
I probably watched a little Lois and Clark. You can't not enjoy Terry Hatcher.
Absolutely.
In 93.
Lovely lady in 1993.
But
lovely lady today.
Still today, for sure. But that was a big draw in 93. Let's just put it that way.
And don't forget Dean Cain. He was dreamy.
Dean Cain, yeah, man. Big hulking beefy dude wearing the cape. But yeah, so many iterations of Superman, but Christopher Reeve is the one that, when I think of Superman, that even still would go into my head. What's your Superman top 3 of all the people that have played him? What's your top 3?
I love Henry. Yeah. For sure. It would be Henry. It would be Christopher Reeve. And then, are there more than 3?
Oh, if you go into like TV and,
No, I don't. I even thought Brandon Routh was pretty good. Like, I didn't mind him at all. It's interesting to see that he's had 0 career, since then, more or less. Like, he was in the Arrowverse. He played a hero, a different type of hero, like a DC version of the guy who was like Ant-Man. He grew and got bigger, and it was also kind of Iron Man-y. He can make stuff. He played him in the Arrowverse.
Okay.
In Legends of Tomorrow, he was on that TV show as well.
Yeah.
But I don't. I thought that those films that film was good, and I was disappointed when they didn't make another one.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting because it was a continuity. It was like Superman 2 with Christopher Reeve, and then they pretended like 3 and 4 didn't happen. They went full Highlander, and then they jumped back in with Superman Returns, as if a continuation of the story.
And they're going to do the same thing with I Am Legend. By the way, they've got an I Am Legend sequel, and they're just going to use the alternate ending from the DVD to be the conclusion, so that I guess Will Smith lives. Is kind of the way that goes.
Oh wow,
yeah. So.
Hollywood, we're right here. We've got fresh ideas. You don't have to just rehash the old things. We're right here. Come on.
You speaking of Awe and Wonder, one of the things you talked about was just like, what would we do, kind of a thing, right? If we got keys to the kingdom.
Yeah, a little bit. If I've thought a lot about that, Jay. If someone read our book, was like, these complete unknowns. Speaking of complete unknowns, if these 2 guys who've written a book, but we like their book, if they gave us, a Star Wars property, or they gave us a Superman, or a Marvel, like, what would we do? I've given some thought to that. Maybe that might be a fun episode one day to flesh out. We could take turns giving our pitches. What we could do.
We're just the nice thing about it is the podcast would be evidence of it. And so when they went and make it, we could, we could sue them for taking our idea.
That's right. See, we had the idea. Yeah. I think for me, it's obviously Christopher Reeve, but I really did enjoy Henry Cavill. I thought he was great. I think he was a fantastic Superman. I'll miss him for sure.
We got to be careful, because there are Zack Snyder apologists, and they, like, you say anything bad about him, like, it's over. But like, I kind of wonder what Henry Cavill would have done with someone else directing that universe, because he was the Justice League. Is the Justice League the one where he comes back, or is that Batman versus
Justice League? Yeah.
That whole scene where he comes back and all that, that was awesome. Like, that was so cool.
You can call me whatever, but I enjoyed the Justice League. I enjoyed the original, not the shorter one, not the Snyder cut. And I enjoyed the Snyder cut as well.
I thought the Snyder cut was better, but yes, I didn't mind it. I think they hit the nail on the head with casting for that. I think they got a little lost in I think maybe the studio got a little involved in,
Well, what was fascinating was they were, and I appreciated it at the time, that they were doing the opposite of Avengers. With Avengers, it was like, everyone's got to have their own movie. We got to set it up, and then we have the meetup. And this one was a little more like, we're going to start with the meetup, and then we're going to let everyone have their movie from there. And it just never really happened. Several years later, we got The Flash, like last year. Then, we got a couple of Aquaman. I've never even seen those Aquaman movies. We got a Batman that ended up becoming the Batman with Robert Pattinson instead of Ben Affleck, that changed, but that was supposed to be Ben Affleck's, Batman, his follow up to, those movies. And we never got any more Superman. So it just kind of all fizzled after I thought was it wasn't the greatest movie. I know a lot of people didn't like it or had problems with it, but I really enjoyed it. I thought it was fine. Minus the special effects. They were kind of,
there is a trend that's happening. I noticed where it's like, sometimes these studios get sideways on something and they put out some negative press and it's like everybody jumps on it, but the actual films aren't that terrible.
Right.
I noticed Craven the Hunter just came out on demand. Mm-hmm. It's got like a 14% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Ugh. Woof.
The audience score is 74%.
Okay.
Now, I don't know if I know of a film that has such a divergent scoring on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah.
To go like this hated to that liked. I mean, 74 is like, that's a well-liked film.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not bad. No.
And so I haven't watched it myself yet, but I think what I might find out is it's not that bad of a film. It's just, they torpedoed it because they decided they don't want to do the Spider-Verse anymore or whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're sliding off into nerddom.
I will say, Superman, the Christopher Reeve story, 4 1/4 lightning bolts, totally worth your time.
4 1/4 is that the most we've ever lightning bolted?
It might be my most lightning bolted show. So I highly recommend it. Check it out. Great retelling of his story. His kids are in there. His kids share, and all of them still have just such fondness for him. So that speaks to the man. When he's gone and the kids, they're not, I hate you. They're like, man, I loved him. I miss him so much, Yeah. So good stuff. So check it out. Superman. Good stuff. And that is to bring it to the awe and wonder. Superman for me growing up, right there with Star Wars is the epitome of awe and wonder,
How do they do some of the things that they did,
Yeah, for sure. What you been watching, man?
Also, that goes on my list. I'm going to hit Conclave and then I'll do that documentary.
Yeah.
Man, I have been, what am I taking in? I've seen a lot of stuff lately, and we could talk about a lot of the things that I've watched, and we could go down that route. But there's one specific film that I want to bring up that I think it's going to be, spoiler alert, I think I'm going to give it a really good rating. Is a little different than what we've talked about as far as films goes. I don't think there's any special effects in it. I think there's less than like 10 main characters.
Wow.
And it's a pretty intimate film. It's a movie called A Real Pain. It was written and directed by Jesse Eisenberg. This is his second film to do that. And it essentially stars him and Kieran Culkin. Not Macaulay, but Kieran. Mm-hmm. And Kieran has, as of late, gotten a lot of, I think it's because of, I can't think of the HBO show that I haven't seen.
Is it Succession? Is he Succession or is he Billions? I can't tell the two
Succession.
apart.
He's in Succession.
Okay, yeah.
And he's gotten a lot of, he did well in that. He did well in Fargo. He's kind of killed it the last 8 or 10 years. And so I'd heard a podcast about this movie and he was on it, and I was really interested to kind of see what it was like because it was a little unlike anything I would normally watch. The story is written by Jesse Eisenberg, and he directs it, like I said, and it's a film about a pair of cousins. So these kids grew up together in New York, and Jesse and Kieran have the same grandmother, and the grandmother was Jewish, and so it was a very Jewish family. They grew up, doing that thing, and she survived the Holocaust. And so when she passed away, saved up enough money for the two of them to go on a trip to Poland and see where she grew up. And so this is a story of these men that are now probably in their 30s. And it's an odd couple pairing. Mm-hmm. Jesse Eisenberg is neurotic. He's probably taking some anxiety medicine. He's got one child. He clearly goes to work every day and probably irons his underwear. That's the type of thing he looks like. And then Kieran Culkin is more of the prototype, slacker millennial who, has a backpack and talks about, the good stuff he brought that they can smoke when they get to Poland. And he's just doesn't look like he really has much going on in life.
Probably hosts a podcast.
Yeah, he's probably got, he's probably got 3 podcasts. And so anyway, they go to Poland and they join a tour with a group of other Jewish people and this historian, and they go to these sites in Poland and they kind of experience it together. And then they go to the camp where she was. And so it's really interesting because it's not a particularly heavy film, but it's just the two of them kind of interacting. And you can tell that they haven't spent much time together recently, but they were very close when they were young. And as the story kind of unfolds, you kind of learn a little bit about, how much they loved each other, and then kind of the growing pains of like growing older, and not one person having a life. And, there's moments where they talk about how they used to go out in the city and they'd stay up all night, and how Jesse could never stay up all night, and how he always fall asleep on the bench or whatever, and how he doesn't do that anymore, and how, Kieran calls him and doesn't answer, and just stuff like that. You kind of start to feel the tension. And then, there are these moments where they're on a train and they get off at the wrong spot and they don't have a ticket. And so Kieran Culkin takes over and they basically hijack their way onto this train. And you could tell Jesse Eisenberg's terrified the whole time.
Yeah.
Probably a little bit like if me and you went on a trip together like that, Kyle, is probably what that would be like.
I would say if we went on a trip with John Carroll, that's.
Oh yeah. 100%. You got your rule follower and your rule breaker. And then
right.
Amongst all this is this string of deep pain and sadness about growing up. In addition to that, like we talked about with Awe and Wonder, there's this kind of underlying theme of Kieran Culkin he's like a giant empath, and he's able to like experience what people are feeling and like take that journey with him. Whereas Jesse Eisenberg is very removed, very much in his head. Kieran can go anywhere and make a million friends. Jesse is forgotten more or less, when he's, and that's kind of the way this is set up. One of the actors that are mostly nobodies, but one of the actors that's in the film that I didn't recognize until after I looked later, Jennifer Grey of Dirty Dancing fame is in the story.
Big nose job. No, you don't recognize her anymore.
I was going to say nose job, not a big nose anymore. So it's different.
Right.
Yeah. It's not for everyone, but I loved a gentle character study. I loved understanding mental illness. They talk about that. Some of the things going around it, what the grandmother thought about them and said to each of them differently, and how they were alike and different, and just the family dynamic, and then just kind of outgrowing a cousin, somebody that you see all the time and you grew up with and have these great memories of, but then you don't talk to. I mean, that's a really interesting thing to think about, especially, from my perspective. I grew up close to all my cousins, and I'm still relatively close to my cousins. And so that thought of like growing apart in that way is really, really interesting to kind of delve into. And like, what's your responsibility? These are two grown men. They're not supposed to be taking care of each other, but one feels kind of a need to take care of the other one, and so on and so forth. And so what does that look like? I just thought that it was really, really well done. I feel like Kieran Culkin should win some type of award for this, because there's buzz for sure. I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
He feels so real that you don't think about him as Kieran Culkin. You think about him as this character. And the way that there's this one scene where he's just sitting in an airport and he's just kind of looking around, and the way he's looking around is so open to the people around him. Like, are you going to talk to me? Are you going to talk to me? And it was just such a like powerful moment of acting over not saying a word, but like just like looking around and like deciding who's the next person that I'm going to be friends with. And that spoke to me, that moved me a little bit. And I just, at the same time, there's real pain going on in everybody's life, and you don't know. And so I'm not going to ruin it. I'm not going to ruin any spoilers, but like, the kind of movie that you just want to sit and you want to think and enjoy and not have anything explode. Like, this is a really, really, really good film. I'll give it 4 lightning bolts.
4 lightning bolts.
4 out of 5 lightning bolts for me.
Okay.
I thought it was great. And I feel like a lot more people should watch it. I don't know if they will. I think it'll be one of those films that kind of flies under the radar. I don't think it cost too much to make, but I thought it was beautiful.
I think, Jay, bringing all things together, I think when I went to go see Conclave, that this was one of the trailers that showed, because
Okay.
I remember laughing. Oh, that looks funny, you know.
It was.
But I definitely relate to the what you described, the yin and the yang, kind of the black and the white, you know, of partnerships. I remember particularly our relationship. I remember when we went to the Wild Horse Saloon. Was that
Yeah.
last year
Yeah.
when we first learned about podcasting? Afterward, there was like an after party at the Wild Horse Saloon, and I just remember walking in. You talked to the whole room, and I sort of sat there, and I was like. I was like, I'm just gonna hang around him, and you know, I might jump in somewhere. But yeah, so I relate to that completely. Like, call me an Eisenberg, I guess.
Every once in a while,
Eisenberg.
every once in a while, some of those people that we met at that thing pops up in our Instagram feed, and I'm like, "Who is this? Why are we following?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, it was at that night.
It was that night at the Wild Horse Saloon."
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Funny stuff. Yeah, that sounds interesting. You know, like I said, I saw the trailer, and like I thought it looked funny. I thought it looked interesting. And you know, hearing some positive buzz, and you know, Kieran Culkin's performance. You know, I think he's the front runner for Best Supporting Actor. From some of the prognostication I've heard,
Okay.
which boils down to one podcast about movies that I listen to called The Big Picture.
I was gonna say, are we promoting The Ringer right now, Kyle? Is that what we're about to do?
It is a Ringer podcast.
Yeah.
It is, yeah. But they prognosticate about all that stuff, and they were very pro his performance. So
I thought Jesse was good too. I like the trajectory of Eisenberg's kind of career right now. Like, for him to go from Superman, Justice League,
yeah, he was like Luther.
Yeah, he got paid a lot of money. He did Facebook. He's been in fun films. He's been in the big films. He's been in the big tent poles. And now it seems as though he wants to write, and he wants to direct, and he wants to be in his stuff. And like, he's making these small films that look really, really good.
It is really weird to see the guys of that generation who are just below us, late 30s, early 40s, you know, like getting old. Like, I saw Seth Rogen the other day, and I was like, that guy's old. Holy
I think he's
cow.
older than us, Kyle.
You think? I thought he was just a little bit younger than us.
You could be right. I don't know. I'm about to look that up, though.
Look it up. Maybe so. Maybe he's right the same age. But I always sort of associated him with the Superbad, you know, crew.
He's 42.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I thought he was a little bit younger than us. He was in the 40-Year-Old Virgin. You know, all that sort of like, millennial, Judd Apatow type movies. Those sort of things. I know he was in Freaks and Geeks, and you know, some of those kind of shows that were really popular 15 years ago or so, or movies. That whole generation. Jonah Hill's another one. I saw him recently. I was like, good golly, what happened to him? You know, it happens to all of us. We all get old, but it's weird to see those guys who, in my mind, frozen in time, they're still like 28 or 25 or however old they were. McLovin. Yeah, all those guys. Yeah. You know, they're all getting old too, just like us, man. Just like us. Yeah, I think I'll have to check that out. It sounds like a fun kind of intriguing, interesting film.
Yeah, they can grow up, Kyle. We don't have to grow up. In fact, let's talk a little childlike wonder about what we watched together. Let's talk about Star Wars Skeleton Crew.
Man, this is kind of what got me thinking about, sort of like being able to enjoy something again like I did when I was a kid.
And you were kind of not up for this series. Like, this wasn't doing it for you.
You know, here's my thing with Star Wars. I have enjoyed Star Wars all my life, and so much about what I enjoy about it is the story. It's the Skywalker story, you know? And so I enjoyed Rogue One because it connected to the Skywalker story. I've enjoyed, you know, the Ahsoka show and the Obi-Wan Kenobi show because they connect into this. You know, they have the Clone Wars DNA and the Star Wars Rebels DNA and, you know, some of that stuff. But it all connects to this bigger Skywalker, you know, story.
So the Acolyte and Skeleton Crew, if they have connections, is super, super light. And so for you, it's like,
yeah, Acolyte had nothing, you know, apart from there were Jedi in it, you know, and the very last scene had a connectivity, you know, to that. But I mean, so that's why I was a little slow to come to this one. It wasn't because it was, you know, very much promoted and geared as a kids show. It was just because from everything I could tell, it was like, this has nothing to do with anything else in Star Wars other than it's set in that universe, and so that's kind of what, made me hesitant. But you guys talked so well of it. You talked about how much you were enjoying it. Clayton, one of our buddies, talked about how his kids were like chanting "Skeleton Crew, Skeleton Crew." They were so excited to watch it, and so that guy, and his kids are a little younger than mine, but still, like, they're, I was like, well, I think maybe my kids will enjoy it. And we took it in last week. We watched the first 4 episodes, and then the next day we watched the next 3, and then last night we watched the finale. And we watched it pretty much in a binge, kind of fashion, pretty quickly.
So let me see, before we get into so essentially it's a story.
Yeah. So, sorry about that. Yeah. Let's describe what it is.
It's a story about some children that are on a planet in the Star Wars universe.
Yep.
They uncover a ship and they go on this adventure.
Yeah.
And part of the problem is these kids that have never been on a ship and really don't know much about the universe are now thrown into it, and they're having problems getting back home. And so that's kind of the gist of this. It's an adventure. It's almost like Goonies in space in some ways.
It is. I mean, it is. There's no question about it. It is Star Wars pirates. I mean, it is trying to be a pirate show, so if you want to say that Andor is like the spy Star Wars, if you want to say that, Mandalorian is sort of the Western Star Wars, this is the pirate Star Wars. So if you enjoy pirates, matey, it's so much so that, like, there's a robot character that's got a peg leg, and he kind of, did you notice that
he's missing an eye too?
Yeah. He's missing an eye and he's got a peg leg, and he's like, like that's his whole shtick. So, I mean, it is a pirate show. And yes, the Goonies in space, the Goonies set in Star Wars universe is perfectly accurate, because you have these 4 children. They're two guys, 2 girls, and they aren't friends, and they are kind of thrust together. And if you remember from the Goonies,
the 2 and 2 are friends.
The 2 and 2 are friends. The 2 guys are buddies, and the 2 girls are buddies, and they kind of are thrust together on this adventure together, and they sort of have to figure out how do we function, as a team, even though we don't know one another very well. And that's kind of similar with the Goonies. You had the younger kids and the older kids in the Goonies, and there was this tension between the younger group and the older group. And, so it's a little bit like that.
So when I say the phrase "a coming of age story," what would that make you think?
Coming of age to me is more like someone becoming an adult, like moving into adulthood. They're going from, like, I wish I could think of a great example right off the top of my head. Maybe kind of like Almost Famous, sort of, like, here's this kid who's about to graduate high school and he's easing into his adult life, that sort of thing. Yeah.
I would say that this might qualify in the sense of they're having to deal with grown-up things. They're having to solve kind of grown-up problems. For me, the 80s and 90s tropes kind of abound. And we've talked about this a little bit, but like, even like you had a suggestion about kind of the parents and like the rule following. What was your?
Yeah. Well, from the first episode, disobedience as plot engine, cause like there's one of the characters his father specifically tells him to do not do that, and what does he do? He does the exact thing his father told him not to do. And that is what drives the plot of the story, is his disobedience
from beginning to end.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like I've watched it twice now. I don't know if you caught this, and this isn't giving anything away, but the end of the story, you are hearing that dad yell at that kid. Well, like that's how it ends.
Yeah. 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 And so I thought that was interesting. You don't see that as much anymore, but just go back and think about our childhood and the movies that were kids are featured. And it is most of the plot is driven by disobedience. I don't know why. Did you ever see the movie Space Camp? Do you remember Space Camp?
I mean, it's been a long time, but I mean, like it's everything from Stand By Me to the Goonies in particular. Don't go do the thing. They go and all do the thing.
Yeah. The thing they're not supposed to do, they go and do. And it causes what adventures that they get into. Yeah. So I thought that was interesting. I'm sure that's still out there. I'm sure that there's, a listener could say, yeah, there's 5 movies I can think right off the top of my head that were made in the last 3 years that have that as a plot. But in terms of like,
they do things to make you think about it. Like,
yeah.
I don't know if this is true or not. You might be able to pull this up quicker. We're both in need of vision help. I've got contacts on, you've got glasses, but like one of the characters had straight up just 1980s, aviator glasses on, pretty much like the classic 1980s dad glasses.
The kind of glasses that megachurch pastors are wearing to look cool, these days.
Is that the first guy that's just wearing regular glasses in Star Wars?
There was a glasses dude in Mandalorian. He was the doctor or whatever, who had glasses on. So it is something that has popped up, but it's not been very, very frequent. So yeah, I mean,
one of the cool things about this story is the childlike awe and wonder, though.
Oh, with both that the characters experience and that I experienced as I watched it. It made me feel so good, to get back into a world like that. I mean, it is Star Wars suburbia. Like, you've never seen anything like this in Star Wars.
Yeah.
It's a neighborhood. It is supposed to make you look at it and think you're in Oregon in 1985, It's just space age. Everything's hovercraft. Everything's, everything's totally digital,
And the kids effectively know nothing of the greater Star Wars universe.
Right.
They don't even know really like where they live.
There is some kind of folklore of Jedi. There's some sort of folklore of, heroes of the galaxy sort of thing. One of the kids is loves to look at a storybook, a digital, like a tablet storybook, and he imagines going on an adventure. And that's a big reason for his disobedience is, he wants to have an adventure for his own. So yeah, it's one of those things like, I'm stuck here at home and there's a galaxy out there and I'm going to go explore it, and that's kind of what what drives his motivation through a lot of the show.
And what happens when you get your wish?
Yeah, exactly. It's a lot harder than you think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got a couple things that I thought were pretty interesting. I would say it's a coming of age story. And here's why. These kids don't know what the real world is like. And they're kind of thrust into it to the point where you have this character, Jude Law, who I would label as a gray character. He's got bad intentions, but he's not bad, if that makes sense.
He's selfishly motivated, but he doesn't really want bad things to happen. He just wants his way. He wants what he wants.
Yeah. And so that's a really grown up character, if you think about it. Like, how many people do you know like that?
Stone Cold Steve Austin. That's it.
Yeah. And so just Stone Cold. And so, I thought that was interesting to watch kids kind of deal with him.
Yeah. And watch him deal with the kids too was really fun.
Yeah,
he did a good job. I thought his portrayal of that character was fun. And there's different dynamics. There's different power dynamics as a result of, pirate code, that comes into play. That's really fun between the lone adult who ends up in this adventure and the children and the droid. Yeah. And, it's really, really fun. Did a great job with that.
I also noticed a theme of submission versus standing up for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a really interesting kind of thing. Like it kind of had permeated the culture of where they lived, was this submission.
Yeah.
And these kids were trying to buck the system. And so that's a little bit where the disobedience shows up, but it's also just, it was a powerful kind of thing to see played out in the lives of the adult when the poop hit the fan, if you will.
So to speak.
Yeah. So to speak.
But it's interesting as well, all of our favorite 80s, 80s movies and stuff were told child POV. The children are the heroes, and the adults are idiots. Mm-hmm. And, when you think about kind of some of those 80s movies and,
a really great modern, well, there it is. Yeah. Stranger Things is basically set in the 80s. And so that's how you get that trope that parents don't know anything or the parents are crazy,
Yeah.
And,
and that was really portrayed well in this one, that the parents, were all workaholics. They were pretty, to varying degrees of involvement in the child's life. I think the little elephant character, one of the characters is a CGI elephant, but it's not distracting. That's another thing. When I saw that, I was like, man, one of the characters is an elephant. That's kind of dumb.
I don't know if he's CGI though. That'll be interesting to find out. Like I haven't gone back to watch, but I mean, it looked like a real outfit.
Yeah, it could have been maybe parts of it were CGI'd,
Yeah.
you know, but his parents were a little overprotective. Like he was very like, and he wore like
soft. He was soft.
He was very soft. He wore like overalls, like, you know, a kid from Sesame Street in 1983 would wear, you know, like, and so he couldn't climb the ladder. You know, he was just really weak. And, you know, his parents kind of overprotected him. And there are some parents that, you know, come home late at night and you go to bed, you know, and so it was very much a picture of those shows we grew up, the movies we grew up watching, you know, and just seeing that reflected again in a 2024, 2025, you know, kind of mindset was just really fun. And my kids loved it. They were like, I can't wait for the finale. They were so excited for it.
So, I think the finale stuck the landing. Like I thought they did things I didn't think they were going to do. And I thought it was fantastic. We can talk about that in a second, but what do you think about the theme of kind of protection from the universe versus immersion in the universe?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's a pretty interesting thing for a child show. We got parents watching it. Like, you know, obviously you're not like, well, what happens if my kid stole a spaceship and went into the universe? Like that's really not a accurate kind of thing, but like, you know.
Well, I think that is, and I'm not trying to get too deep, but I think that is the question and the challenge of our generation of parents. We, in many ways, do not let our kids fail. We don't let them get out and try things. We overprotect in the sense of, you know, what we allow them to see or experience or try and do. You know, we try to pave the way. I think I've heard it called lawnmower parents. You know, we sort of try to go cut the grass for them so that when they're walking behind us, it's a smooth path and they don't have to go through any weeds and they don't have to go through any hardships or difficulties, you know.
And some of that has to do with our generation being Generation X. We're kind of the first latchkey kids. I don't think that you and I necessarily were that, but like there were a lot of our friends, you know, they would let themselves in from school and they were by themselves the majority of the time. And so, you know, the response to that is, I'm going to be so actively involved in my kid's life. They're never going to have that feeling that I felt. And so you kind of get the helicopter parents and then you get these lawnmower parents that may be a little newer phrase. And, you know, I deeply feel that as you're talking about that, as my twin daughters, are in college now. And it's like, you know, I feel like the decisions they make are significant. And so I want to go pull out the John Deere and like cut it low. You know?
Yeah.
It made me think a little bit about in our ethics days, is it Richard Niebuhr or Reinhold Niebuhr or whatever the guy's name was, the Christ in culture conversation.
Richard Niebuhr wrote that one. Yeah.
You've got Christ in culture. You've got Christ
culture
against culture, and then you've got Christ transforming culture.
Christ over culture.
Yeah. And not to get too into it, but like, you know, with these kids, they go from being so bored with their world to being on an actual pirate island of some sort, not an island, but like a floating base of some sort where, you know, a city. And, you know, they're seeing things they shouldn't be seeing and they're hearing things they shouldn't hear. And it's like, they don't really know how to compute, and their innocence and their naivete gets them in trouble. And, pretty quickly to the point where everybody's after them and wants them and is wanting to attack them. And so like, how do you prepare your own children for having a taste of the world, but not being corrupted by the world? I think that's a really interesting kind of motif.
That is one of the things that they don't teach in, you know, when they hand you a baby after it's born and you leave the hospital, like, here's how you do this effectively. Here's how you do this well. It is, it's really a challenge, you know, because you don't want them to mess up so bad that they really hurt their opportunities in life, and, you know, and that they're set up for failure by some bad choices when they're younger. But at the same time, you know, if you don't get some calluses on your hands, if you don't get some scrapes on your knees, you know, if you don't get some go through some hard things, you know, I heard the illustration one time. If you ever see a cocoon and you see the butterfly struggling to get out, don't open the cocoon and let it out. It'll fall to the ground and die, because what strengthens the butterfly is the strength that it builds as it fights its way out of the cocoon.
I hope that's true, because that's a really cool analogy. I don't know if you like got that from some TED Talk or pastor or something that just made that up for you. That's powerful. But like, I'm going to go fact check that later. I like that. That's good.
I've heard it too many places, I think, for it to be just somebody, made up, but
I don't know, man. There's lots of things that we latch onto that just aren't even a thing.
Could be. But how do we let our kids, stretch their wings and learn how to fly on their own? Where do we make the path smooth, and where do we let them? Go in there and figure it out. It's a hard question. I don't know that I've done it very well, but I'm trying.
And we'll see. My dad told me recently, he's like, well, you turned out okay, so it's fine. And so hopefully that we'll be able to do that ourselves,
Yeah.
We'll be able to say that, well, they turned out okay. So who knows whether we did it right or not. One thing I wanted to talk about story-wise, it's 8 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times I feel like a conclusion isn't earned. Sometimes a conclusion in a story happens and the characters do these amazing things and it's not earned. And I felt like this story, these kids doing amazing things in episode 8 were kind of a building up of them already having to go through things that they went through. Yeah. So it wasn't like, I can't believe he did that. That's unrealistic or whatever, as far as the story goes. And so I felt like watching them succeed in the final episode was like they'd taken all the experiences that they had and they put them into practice.
They applied.
And what's better than that when it comes to a coming of age tale of watching somebody who is helpless, the little butterfly in the cocoon. Yeah. We got to see the struggle, and then in episode 8 you get to see him fly. Yeah. And to the point where they're helping their parents know what it's like to go beyond submission, but actually like standing up for what they believe. And I thought that was terrific.
No, I did too. I agree with you that it felt earned. Now, it was very much, you have to suspend disbelief and very much like,
it's a Star Wars.
Kids can fall 20 feet and be completely, going at high speeds and completely just stand up. I'm okay. That happens a couple times.
I mean, he's an elephant. There's a lot of cushion there, dude.
There's some cushion. Yeah.
Maybe his trunk, like cushion the fall a little
patent him somewhere. Yeah. Well, let me give a recommendation. Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, as I say, as a someone who saw this in a very short time span, here's how I'd recommend you take it in. Here's how I recommend you watch it if you haven't seen Skeleton Crew yet. Watch it in 2 episode increments. We watched the first 4 all in a row, and I'm going to be honest, somewhere in the middle of the 3rd or 4th episode, I was like, these kids are getting annoying. They are a little annoying, and so
I think kids.
They are kids. Yeah, that's exactly. They're definitely kids. So I think if you watch the first 2 episodes and then you come back the next day, you watch 3 and 4, come back the next day, watch 4 and 5, then you come back the next day, watch 6 and 7 or 7 and 8, by the end, I think it'll be, that's the best way to see it. So it's almost like an hour-long show, 4-hour-long episodes, basically. So that's my recommendation for how to take it in.
I think we've hit all the things that I kind of wanted to talk about Skeleton Crew. As far as a rating, how many lightning bolts, Kyle?
Man, it is not. I want to give it a high lightning bolt. I want to give it 4 lightning bolts. Not because it's the greatest story Star Wars has ever told, or because it's the special effects were a little janky in the last episode. I thought I was like, oh, you can see the seams there a little bit, but I think from an awe and wonder, just being sucked into a story seeing it through the eyes of a child, watching it with my kids. If you're a parent, you have kids, it's pretty safe, pretty child friendly in most ways. So it's not something that is you're gonna have a lot of objections to watch. So, I mean, I would say 4 lightning bolts, because I really, really enjoyed it and had a good time watching it.
I can agree with that. It was helmed by John Watts. I think he directed at least the first and last episode. John Watts has done a lot of cool stuff, and he's kind of got that. He did
the first Spider-Man, didn't he?
Yeah, Spider-Man Homecoming, maybe.
Homecoming, I think so.
Which again is a high school story. And,
that's right. Yeah,
I think he's done some of the other stuff. If he didn't do Spider-Man Homecoming, he may have been the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man. Like I will have to look that one up. He might. He's involved in Spider-Man somewhere.
Yeah,
I don't know
if he was Homecoming. Pretty sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Big fan of him though. I thought from a storytelling standpoint, it was one of the more successful Star Wars 1-season series. Yeah. And I give it 4 as well. I think it's worth watching, and especially if you've got kids. And if you don't have kids, it's a great way to kind of bring back that childlike awe and wonder and kind of remember what that's like.
Yeah.
I
want to say this. I don't think it needs another series, another season. I like it being an all-in-one, kind of story.
I'd be okay with seeing Jude Law show up somewhere else, or the world of Aladdin. I have a feeling that might pop up somewhere in some way, know?
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Yeah, I would be perfectly content if that was it. If it's just those 8 episodes and just a kind of a fun one-off encapsulated story. You don't have to do it over and over. So yeah.
And part of me wonders, like, because they canceled Acolyte or whatever allegedly, but with Star Wars, particularly Filoni, like they only did so many seasons of Rebels, only so many seasons of Clone Wars. They're Bad Batch, but all these characters are now coming together. And so I don't know that a series ending means that the characters go away. I think that based on need, they might pop up in other places, and it could be interesting.
Yeah, could be.
There seems to be a new Star Wars theme that is appearing where Jedis and types of Jedis show up out of nowhere, and we don't know where they came from, and they start to explain where they came from, and it makes a lot of sense. And it's a really interesting kind of plot point.
I thought this is just a bit of something to look out for. In the last episode, the use of Order 66 was genius. That was one of the best callbacks to Order 66. I thought that was really clever. Really enjoyed that little twist.
Yeah.
So look for that.
And
in the last episode.
They didn't call it Order 66,
right? They didn't.
So if you didn't know what it was, it didn't.
Right.
It didn't. They used it very well.
Yeah, I thought it was perfect. I was like, oh yeah, that was great. Good job. Good job there.
And in a very cool way, a kid's movie more or less had a Wizard of Oz twist too, which I thought was pretty cool.
Same thing. Yeah, that's the exact illustration I used when I was like, I think we got a Wizard of Oz situation going.
Yeah,
yeah,
I liked it. But it is definitely something that brings a little childlike awe and wonder.
Yeah,
one of the things that we've probably dreamed about since we were kids was writing a book or telling a story or maybe making a movie. And we got to do that together. We got to kind of fulfill one of our childhood dreams of writing the Dead Rockstars.
Yeah.
Maybe the Dead Rockstars wasn't the story we imagined we'd write, but like it was a dream come true in a lot of ways for me. And like, I think it would be a huge thing for us. Maybe we'd have quite a bit of awe and wonder if it became a film and we got to, well, let me rephrase that. It became a movie because it's a movie. It's not meant to be high art, but if that were made into a movie, I think that'd be really awesome. You'd probably see me have some awe and wonder there.
Yeah.
But our character, Cole Denton, is moving into a part of a universe that he didn't know existed, and so he kind of experiences some of that awe and wonder. And I thought it'd be cool if maybe tonight we read a portion of this.
Yeah, we'd love to let you, our listeners, learn a little bit about our book. And so we thought we would just kind of bring you into the universe a little bit and see sort of some of his awe and wonder here. Yeah. If you have a copy of your book, it's like the old hymnal. We're going to be on page 84. You can read along with us if you would like.
We're just going to do the first and the last, and
always skip the third verse. That nobody in the history of Christendom knows a third verse to any hymn ever. That's a deep cut joke right there. Deep cut joke.
What's happening, just to set it up, is Cole Denton has agreed to join the DRS, and he is now in a plane with
Jimi Hendrix.
And they are about to visit headquarters. And so Cole is about to experience some awe and wonder, and we're about to get a little bit of that. So, Cal, you want to start us off?
Sure. Wow was all Cole could come up with. I know it's a lot to take in. Buckle up. We're about to land. I know your questions have questions. Just write them down. Garcia will answer them.
Isabella landed smoothly as if the runway were made of glass. Jimmy glided down the greenway and let the plane slow to a roll before turning towards the hangar. On behalf of our crew, I'd like to welcome you to the Netherworld.
Netherworld? Jimmy smirked. You don't think Rockstars went to heaven, did you? Cole was bewildered. This felt like equal parts theme park, Hollywood backlot, and space colony. He half wondered as the doors opened if he clicked his heels 3 times, he would wake up in Kansas. Maybe he was in Kansas. It sure didn't feel like Boston, Illinois, or anywhere else he had ever seen.
Jimmy knowingly grinned. Cole, it's okay, man. It's okay to not know what to think. I've been here nearly 30 years, and I even don't know what to do with it. The Netherworld used to be a frontier land. Abe's men acquisitioned it in the late 1800s. Here, the secrets have secrets.
They were pulling into the hangar when Cole couldn't help himself any longer. I know you said Garcia would answer my questions, but wait, Jerry Garcia? The questions flooded his brain, and out they came.
Where is this place? Is Freddie Mercury alive? What do you do every day? Why did they recruit you? Where did you learn how to fly? Do I get a gun? How big is Biggie? Does Biggie like hugs? Do you guys do a lot of partying? Who built this place? Do I get a mansion? Are there girls here? What's your favorite guitar? Favorite headband? Do you like Slash? Just how awesome is Elvis? Do we get matching outfits? Do I get a code name? When is my first mission? Is Jerry more grateful now that he is fake dead? What happened to Buddy Holly? Do we get our own cell phones? Do you have cell coverage out here? Where are we again?
Cole sighed like a balloon, pushing out its last remnant of air. He slumped over in his seat, and he held his head in his hands. I'll answer one of those, Jimmy replied. And that is it.
I guess if you need to know what the answer is, sorry, I'm choked up over here. Coughing, not emotional. If you need to know what the answer is, Dead Rockstars, wherever books are sold.
Or at deadrockstarsbook.com.
Where you can get an autographed copy.
You
and
can
a t-shirt.
get an autographed copy. Special
you
first
can't get
edition.
this t-shirt. You can't get this t-shirt.
Can't get that one. You can get that one somewhere else in the world at some point, I'm sure.
Probably so.
Soon, I'm sure. But yeah, so that's Cole's experience of awe and wonder as he sees the Netherworld for the first time. And that's that was some of my favorite jokes were in that little piece. I had kind of forgotten, but as we were reading, I was like, "Oh yeah, man, there's some good stuff here." So fun memory to go back down memory lane.
It is good. I don't know that we've read that one together either. That's
no, we never have.
We usually started a little bit earlier in the story.
Yeah.
So we get to the last part of this as we wrapping up our hour. Kyle, what have you learned?
You know, sometimes you ask me that question and I know exactly what I'm going to say. And other times I have to talk until I figure it out because I didn't write anything down as we were talking. But I think I learned, Jay, that not surprisingly, but I learned that there are points when you want to watch a movie where nothing explodes. And that's okay. And that's okay for no explosions in a film. Yeah.
Don't tell people, but sometimes I like to get deep.
Yeah. I used to really, I kind of like, you know, when we were like Woodley Court days, you know, back in Birmingham, I kind of like was like a very low key cinephile. You know, I was like, I want to see these films, these great films and all this, you know, and then at some point I was like, you know what? I just want to be entertained. Give me Top Gun Maverick, man. Give me Avatar 2 Way of Water. That's what I want.
Yeah. Well, I did enough stuff in my life where I'm not really interested in the melodrama or like when awful things happen, but I felt safe enough about this film. I was like, this is going to be kind of like two buddies on a train.
On a Holocaust trip.
I didn't know that's where they were going. And it was fun. Nobody was gassed in the gas chamber, but it was heavy, but it was good. And I sometimes like to get philosophically serious.
Yeah.
So.
Jay, what'd you learn?
For me, Kyle, I as much as I know about you and as much time as we spent together, I don't know that I ever knew that Superman was kind of your first favorite superhero. Yeah. I didn't know that. And I've seen you wear the shirt before. I've seen you, but I just never really put it together. And so I think that's cool. And it makes a lot of sense why you like Christopher Reeve. So
he's my guy, man.
I'm going to check that documentary out. It's on my list.
It's good stuff.
All right, buddy. Well, it's been a good 10th episode. I think we got 2 more to go this season.
That's right.
Until then,
see you next time.